The meeting is taking place, of course, in a hybrid format pursuant to House Order of June 23rd, 2022. Before we proceed, I would like to remind everyone to address all comments through the chair. In accordance with the committee's routine motion concerning connection tests for witnesses, I'm informed the committee that all witnesses have completed the required connection tests in advance of the meeting. Before we begin witness testimony, we have one quick committee business item to get out of the way. 2 supplementary study budgets were distributed to members earlier this week. And on that note, does the committee agree to adopt a supplementary budget in the amount of $10,000 for the study of the ecosystem impacts and management of pinniped populations? Any objections? I see thumbs up. Okay, all good. Thank you. Done. Does the committee agree to adopt a supplementary budget in the amount of $26,000 for the study of foreign ownership and corporate concentration? I'll just ask if there's any objections. I see Mr. Perkins with a thumbs up, and I don't see anything for an objection. So again, we'll adopt those 2 budgets. Thank you, everyone, for your tardiness and getting started early, and we'll continue on. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and a motion adopted on Monday, May 1st, 2023, the committee is beginning its study of the allocation of resources to the Great Lakes Fisheries Commission. I would like to welcome our panel of witnesses. Appearing as an individual, we have Debbie Dingell, Member of Congress, House of Representatives of the United States by video conference. And I will say, I understand Ms. Dingell has a prior commitment. She'll only give a statement to the committee and then she will be exiting, as far as I know. Representing the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, we have Niall O'Day, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister to Strategic Policy, Richard Goodyear, Assistant Deputy Minister and Chief Financial Officer, and representing the Great Lakes Fishery Commission, Ethan Baker, Commissioner and Vice Chair by video conference, Robert Lamb, Executive Secretary, Gregory McClinchy, Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs. Thank you all for taking the time to appear. You will each have up to 5 minutes for an opening statement. We will start with Congresswoman Dingell for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chairman McDonald, Vice Chairs Arnold and Despiant, and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today, and I wish that I could be there in person. Though I will tell you, we're sharing your Canadian air here at the United States. The Great Lakes are a true natural treasure and is a critical binational resource Canada and the United States must continue to prioritize and protect for future generations. As someone from Michigan, and one of the co-chairs of the Congressional Great Lakes Task Force, the restoration and protection of the Great Lakes has been a top priority for me from the moment I came to Congress. And I'm pleased that a similar task force now also exists in Canada. For those who may not know me, I grew up in St. Clair, Michigan, which sticks directly across from Canada on the St. Clair River in southern Ontario. And I spent many summers in my inner tube going down that river. And by the way, in those days, you didn't know what customs was or immigration. I was in Steg Island, which was Canada more than my own in the summer. For those of us who grew up in a border town, we know innately the special bond that exists between our 2 nations. And my district now is north of Canada, and I too look at Canada very frequently, and we celebrate the only North America International U.S. Wildlife Refuge as well. The Great Lakes unite us as a region. They are both a binational and bipartisan priority for all of us. Since its establishment, the Great Lakes Fishery Commission, located in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and in my district, has been tasked with managing and protecting this vital fishery, and it's proved to be a remarkable success. Thanks to the binational cooperation, our shared fishery is thriving, now accounting for more than $8 billion in economic activity each year. With all that said, I am deeply concerned about the state of the Commission today. The Great Lakes Fishery Commission has not met in more than a year and has not had a regular program since 2021. Part of the problem was a considerable funding gap that I'm pleased to note the Government of Canada addressed in its 2022 budget. However, the budget did not remedy the problem. Rather, it is our understanding that structural issues in Canada, which are the subject of today's hearing, have crippled the Commission's ability to do its job. The Commission's U.S. section has informed me that the failure of the Department of Fisheries and Oceans to deliver the funds to the Commission in a timely manner led to the cancellation of the Commission's budget meeting last fall. The first time in the organization's history that this binational commission was unable to meet. Moreover, when the funds were announced, the commissioners were informed that the department would retain millions of dollars. Essentially, the department, not the commissioners, determined the program. But the 1954 treaty is clear. The commissioners, who are appointed at the highest level, determine the program. Since 2018, the Commission, members of the public, and scores of members of Parliament have supported a proposal to move the Commission's file from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans to Global Affairs Canada. This week, I also led a letter with many of my bipartisan colleagues of the Congressional Great Lakes Task Force to Prime Minister Trudeau to express our serious concerns and to add our support to this proposal. This would mirror the governor's structure in the United States. Let me be clear. I respect Canada's sovereignty and would never do anything to harm this close relationship we all have. And I'm speaking for myself and not on behalf of the U.S. government. But we need a long-term solution. We need to get the commissioners meeting again. There is an old saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Our two nations, I sincerely believe, will always choose to go together. And that includes working together to protect our shared Great Lakes fishery. Again, thank you for inviting me to testify. That's the Canadian air we're experiencing, sorry. My asthma has been acting up, and for holding this hearing. But I'm glad to share it with you because we have equal experiences. And it is our shared collective interest that the Great Lakes Fishery Commission is able to successfully carry out its binational mission. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that.
Sorry.
Not a problem. That's all good. Thank you for appearing and sharing that information with the committee. So we'll move on now to Department of Fisheries and Oceans for 5 minutes or less, please.
Bonjour and good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. I'll start by saying our thoughts go to both Canadians and Americans affected by the extreme wildfires in several regions across the country, including particularly those directly affected in Nova Scotia, Quebec, Alberta, and the Northwest Territories. The safety and well-being of Canadians and of our employees in these regions is a priority. And as the situation continues to develop, we urge everyone to follow the guidance of officials. My name is Niall O'Day, and I'm the Senior Assistant Deputy Minister for Strategic Policy at Fisheries and Oceans Canada. My colleague, Richard Goodyear, Chief Financial Officer, and I appreciate the opportunity to appear before this committee on behalf of Fisheries and Oceans Canada in regards to the Great Lakes Fisheries Commission. I'll begin as well by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. Les Grands Lacs.
The Great Lakes are a valuable resource shared by Canada and the United States. More than 11 million Canadians depend on the Great Lakes for food, drinking water, employment, and recreation. However, the Great Lakes fisheries are under constant threat from habitat loss, pollution, and invasive species, including sea lampreys.
60 years, Canada, in close partnership with the United States, has supported the work of the Great Lakes Fisheries Commission. This includes work to combat invasive sea lamprey, which present an ongoing risk to fisheries, investment in science, and binational efforts for sound fishery management to maintain an abundant fishery for generations to come. In accordance with Canada's obligations under the 1954 Convention on Great Lakes Fisheries between Canada and the United States, we fully support the work of the GLFC and transboundary efforts to manage the health of Great Lakes fisheries. Pêche et Océans Canada.
Fisheries and Oceans Canada plays a critical role across the Great Lakes in managing impacts to fish and their habitat under the habitat protection provisions of the Fisheries Act, as well as implementing the aquatic invasive species regulations, delivering the Canadian portion of the Sea Lamprey Control Program for the Commission, administering the Species at Risk Act, and managing an Asian carp program. Nearly 50 dedicated staff are directly involved in the Sea Lamprey Control Program alone.
While there have been some challenges to our relationship in the past, primarily related to Canada's financial contributions and engagement in the Commission, DFO and the GLFC Secretariat have worked together to make significant progress to remedy these issues in a short amount of time. To address the identified gaps in Canada's contributions to the Commission, funding was announced as part of Budget 2022, providing $44.9 million over 5 years, starting in 2022-23, and $9 million ongoing to Fisheries and Oceans Canada to support the Great Lakes Fisheries Commission. This increased funding takes Canada's annual contribution for the work of the Commission to over $19 million. Departmental officials have addressed the second challenge by working closely with the Commission Secretariat to ensure a mutual understanding of the necessary scope of Canadian engagement and of the required implementation plans, procedures, and priorities. For example, following constructive discussions between the Department and the Secretariat, a change in the process was agreed to see all Budget 2022 funding received by the Department for 2022 and 2022-23 and 23-24 flow directly to the Secretariat. I want to conclude by noting that collaborative efforts between Canada and the United States, led by the Commission, have reduced sea lamprey populations in the Great Lakes by 90%. This work has directly facilitated the ongoing restoration of traditional, ceremonial, commercial, and recreational fisheries in the region. Le personnel qui travaille sur
The dedicated staff that conduct work under the umbrella of the Convention, whether they are at the Department in the province of Ontario, at the Commission Secretariat in Ann Arbor, or across partner agencies in the United States, care deeply and work very hard to make the Commission a success.
Canada is committed to working closely with the Commission and our U.S. partners to advance the objectives of the GLFC, and we look forward to continuing that collaboration in the months and years ahead. Thank you for your attention, and we welcome your questions.
Thank you, Mr. O'Day. We'll now go to the Great Lakes Fishery Commission for 5 minutes or less. I'm not sure who's giving the opening statement, but you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That'll be me. On behalf of the Great Lakes Fishery Commission, I want to thank you, Mr. Chair, and all of the members of this committee for your time today. I too wish I could be there in person, but we'll settle for the virtual. I agreed to serve as a commissioner because I believe in a strong relationship between Canada and the United States, and it's the only way to ensure Great Lakes productivity. As Mrs. Dingle has noted, the GLFC has not met in more than a year. As I will explain, the Commission's dysfunction is rooted in Canada's flawed governance structure. From our first day in 1956, long before me, and again until 1979, the Commission communicated with Canada through external affairs. In 1979, DFO assumed a more prominent role in the administration of the Commission's Canadian portfolio, at the expense of our relationship with what is now Global Affairs Canada, or GAC. Our problem, thus, has been decades in the making, with the commissioners deciding in 2018 to embark on a course to address these problems. That journey toward solutions came to a head in November of 2021, when for the first time in the Commission's history, we were unable to establish our suite of programs because of the significant impact of an $8.8 million Canadian deficit on our binational programs. The shortfall was exacerbated by the fact that the U.S. was no longer willing to subsidize Canada's deficit, as it had for decades. The consequence was the deferral of a Commission budget for 7 months in the hopes that Parliament would provide the funds, which it finally did in April 2022. For that, we of course thank you. On that basis, the Canadian and U.S. sections felt confident in setting our belated 2022 programs in June of 2022. However, we were dismayed to learn the following November that not only had Parliament's 2022 funding not been provided, but the full Canadian appropriation for 2023 was not available either, some 8 months following Parliament's commitment to fully fund the Commission. Worse, DFO then communicated its intent to withhold from Parliament's allocation $15 million and more than $3 million each year thereafter, contrary to the program negotiated by the commissioners. Is this what Parliament intended? U.S. commissioners enter into discussions with their Canadian counterparts, trusting that decisions made between the sections representing the parties to the convention will be implemented as promised. Nowhere does the convention give anyone other than the commissioners the authority to set the commission's programs, yet the portfolio manager, by withholding funds, did just that. DFO's actions frankly shattered the collaborative approach between the two commission sections and further demonstrated what we had been reporting for years, that the current governance arrangement is irreparably broken. While this was not the first time this happened, it was indeed the final straw. These problems are rooted in the very structure of how Canada supports the Commission. For the information of members, I have provided documents to the clerk, including our legal opinion detailing the history and the mechanisms of the Commission, the role of DFO, and the resulting conflict of interest and duties innate with the current interface between the Commission and Canada as a party to the Convention. DFO will rightly tell you that they have now paid most of the current year's allocation, but so long as the governance issues remain, the fiscal issues cannot be resolved. If there is one message I want to leave you with today, it is this: money alone is not the problem. Money is, however, a symptom of the greater governance issue. The Commission has the obligation under the treaty to determine its programming and allocate its budget. This may not be how the portfolio manager would prefer it to be, but that does not change the will of Parliament as expressed in the Convention. It is germane to note that years ago, the Commission suggested several solutions prior to advocating for a machinery of government change to GAC. However, we could never get traction with the DFO to explore these alternatives. This intransigence brought us to where we are today. We are asking for your help to ensure an adherence to the Convention and to the high ethical expectations set out by statute and by Canada's own rules. First, that the Commission's portfolio management duties be moved from DFO to GAC to mirror the successful and proven U.S. structure. Our Commission belongs at GAC, and no one is given compelling reasons to the contrary. And second, that Canada accepts the proposed Memorandum of Agreement, the MOA, as the Commission has drafted it and shared it with DFO as the current portfolio manager. This MOA will clarify several fundamental convention expectations and provide better fiscal transparency and adherence to the provisions of the convention. The Commission is simply asking that it be allowed to implement the treaty as our governments intended. Our concerns are not personality-based. In fact, my staff tells me that DFO CFO, Mr. Goodyear, is working to help remedy many of these problems, but change is difficult because of a deep-seated culture, which includes a deep misunderstanding within DFO of the Commission's full mandate, a misunderstanding of the department's role as the Commission's portfolio manager, and a misunderstanding of context within which the department delivers sea lamprey control on behalf of the Commission, rather than as a domestic program under the authority of the Fisheries Act. We were also cautiously reassured when Minister Murray attended the 2023 Great Lakes Day on Parliament Hill, where she expressed her personal regret with the animosity that has taken root in our relationship. Mr. Chair, our commissioners, U.S. and Canadian, are eager to get back to work. We are volunteers who are committed to the Great Lakes, but we can no longer allow these problems to fester. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My staff and I are pleased to take your questions.
Thank you for that, and we'll move right into questions. We'll now go to Mr. Ripp for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I get too far underway here, I want to conduct a quick poll of the witnesses. Given that this has got clear binational implications, and given that the Congresswoman had to leave, I'd like to do a quick poll, and just a yes or no for now, please. Is there anything in in Representative Debbie Dingell's statement that you wish to challenge? I'd like to begin with Mr. Baker. Just a yes or no, please.
Sorry, just to clarify, the question is whether or not I'd like to challenge anything that Mrs. Dingell has stated?
Correct.
No.
Mr. Lamb?
No, sir.
Mr. McClinchy?
No, sir.
Mr. Goodyear?
No, sir.
Mr. O'Day?
No, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't have a lot of time because of the time limits on our questions. There's a lot of evidence that has been presented to us, over 60 pages, by the Commission. And I'm not going to rehash all of that, but the Great Lakes Fishery Commission, along with many others, 43 members of the Liberal Party, 30 congressional members, industry experts on both sides of the border, including the Ontario Fishers and Hunters, the Canadian Wildlife Federation, state representatives, the Commission's Canadian and U.S. committees of advisors. Everyone is on the record, as we've heard from the testimony, that the machinery of government function needs to be moved, that the structure is presently broken. And again, I won't go through all the evidence that is outlined here. To the DFO, Mr. Goodyear, why has the Commission not solved this issue?
Mr. Chair, I can't speak on behalf of the Commission. I can merely speak on behalf of my role as the CFO of Department of Fisheries Oceans. I offer that you may wish to speak to the Commission.
Has the Department not solved it? I misspoke, sorry, the Commission.
Mr. Chair, in terms of the funding required in support of GLFC, we have provided the full slate of funding in the last fiscal year, and we have done so in fiscal year 23-24, and we have established a stable and predictable funding amount for the Commission going forward.
The Commission has put forward the clear request, as have many others, for a change in the machinery of government function because of the structural conflict of interest. They provided a legal opinion here. Can you provide a legal opinion table with the committee? Do you disagree with the legal opinion provided in the package? Yes, please, Mr. Goodyear.
I can take that question. So, sir, with respect to the machinery of government decision, there's active analysis and support for that decision ongoing within government. I would just articulate not solely a decision and not actually a decision of the
My question is your opinion on the legal opinion provided to you by the Commission, the Fasken opinion. Do you agree with the opinion?
The interests of the GLFC are aligned with the interests of the Government of Canada. It is a binational commission designed to deliver the reduction of sea lampreys within the Great Lakes. The opinion
states that the DFO commissioners are in a structural conflict of interest. Do you agree?
We do not agree.
You do not agree. Given the importance of this issue, may I ask why the Deputy Minister isn't here?
The deputies have been engaged at the senior-most levels on this question, working actively with the Commission and its Secretariat to resolve the challenges associated with the management of this Commission.
The breakdown over this past year, which had been many years in the making, comes about because of the frustration of our American partners. And the question they're asking, one of the preconditions for coming back to the table, deals with who speaks for Canada. That's what that legal opinion refers to. So you said you do not agree with it. Can you table a legal opinion to this committee that counters that?
Canada is the contracting party to the Commission, and DFO represents the contracting party.
Represents a contracting party. So you are disputing the legal opinion that comes to the structural conflict of interest that the commissioners are in when the DFO appoints them.
That's correct, because as contracting party, Canada identifies its commissioners, and those commissioners are appointed by Canada. So there is
yes.
inherently no conflict.
Can you table a legal opinion that counters the Fasken report to this committee?
We can look into that. We'll take that.
Thank you. So who speaks for Canada at the Commission?
Canada is represented by DFO as contracting party. Canada appoints commissioners who are Canadian to the Commission to work in cooperation with U.S. partners. And those, as you know, are two identified by the Government of Ontario and two identified by the Government of Canada.
So are you stating that the commissioners, the Canadian commissioners, speak for Canada, or the DFO speaks for Canada?
The commissioners are appointed by Canada to serve the interests of the binational commission.
So who speaks for Canada? That's what the Americans are asking as a precondition to come back to the table. Who speaks for Canada?
Canada, as contracting party, is represented by DFO.
So the DFO speaks for the Commission?
in dealings, so in State Department to Government of Canada dealings, that is a long-standing relationship between DFO and State Department
Which is at the
counterparts.
heart of the dispute. The Minister Murray has characterized the relationship of the department with the commissioners as being a parent-child relationship. That's at the heart of the crux. Do you agree with that statement, that the DFO is in a parent-child relationship with the commissioners?
I do not recall the minister having made that statement, and no, it would not be a parent-child relationship. It's a commission as any other commission of the Government of Canada, a number of which DFO supports, and many of which are supported by other departments, including Global Affairs Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll come back.
Thank you, Mr. Rep. You're dead on time. Thank you for that. We'll now go to Mr. Badaway for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's a pleasure to be here. And to the members, as you're well aware, I'm not a member of this committee, but I am obviously a Great Lakes advocate, not only within our caucus, but within all of Parliament, including all the parties that we work with on this issue and many other issues relative to the Great Lakes. My riding is a Great Lakes hub, and it straddles two lakes and relies on those lakes for economic development, for transportation, for tourism. From the Welland Canal to the restaurants on our main streets, the families in my riding rely on this $6 trillion Great Lakes economy as part of their livelihood. I know that the GLFC is central to maintaining these advantages, which is why I'm so bothered by what I'm hearing and have been bothered by it for the past 2, if not 3 years, as we've been trying to rectify this situation. Not just from the witnesses, but from members of Congress, members of the Commission, members of the public, members of Parliament, documents that I've received that the Commission has submitted, including the ones that we have here, over 60 pages, that chronicle, quite frankly, a bothersome chain of events that track back to a broken interface. I want to thank the members of the committee for taking up this study. This is not a partisan issue. It is, in fact, a Canadian issue. These problems have developed and existed under several governments. Let's be clear on that. Not just this government, but several governments going back decades. And I hope this is the last government, and together, being a nonpartisan issue, that we all can come to the table, whether it be from the public, the governing side, and or the administering side, to once and for all deal with this issue. We need to fix this, and we need to fix this now. It's too important, and it can't be ignored no longer. It's too important because the economic, the ecological, and the social implications of the Great Lakes for thousands of communities like mine in Niagara. And it's too important because ignoring this problem for so long has now been a matter of negligence, quite frankly, to the Canada-U.S. relationship. So I'm going to start off with a very simple question, and Mr. O'Day or Mr. Goodyear, you can jump in and answer it as you choose. I gather from the testimony that I've heard today, and from a lot of the discussion that we've been having throughout the past few years, that the Commission and the DFO had good negotiations over the budget and the MOA, and the creation of the MOA. Given the treaty was approved by Congress and Parliament, I'm concerned about the fact that you, or anyone for that matter, believes that you have the right to negotiate over how the treaty is implemented. What gives the GLFC, or the DFO for that matter, the right to negotiate what in fact Parliament, as well as quite frankly Congress, has established under a treaty organization? And speaking about budget, has directed through the appropriations of the budget accordingly through Treasury, a flow through DFO, to GLFC, and of course being the contractor, the invoice being received by the GLFC and paid for by the GLFC for the contracts submitted by the DFO.
Thank you for the question. Mr. Chair, the negotiation would not be the right way to characterize the discussions that are ongoing. Treaties, as this table will appreciate, are particularly those written in the 1950s, have only a certain amount of detail in them. They articulate a desire for two countries to collaborate in the management of an issue of shared interest in this instance. And it is for the contracting parties and the Commission itself to give life to those commitments in the actual ongoing work of the Commission and the agencies that support it. In this instance, there have been ongoing discussions about how to move towards that effective implementation. That effective implementation is intended to be in full compliance with the letter and spirit of the convention.
Thank you, Mr. O'Day. Mr. Galinci, if you can answer the same question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's true. This can't be viewed as a negotiation. From the Commission's standpoint, we see the efforts that we're engaging in as being a clarification of where we need to be, where the Commission needs to be as far as delivering its treaty mandate. And we've also expressed number of solutions, as you've pointed out, the move to GAC, the machinery of government change, as well as the MOA, because there's a need to future-proof what we're doing, right? This has been a serious distraction and a serious takeaway from the work of the Commission over the last number of years. Opportunities are being missed in terms of partnerships that might be there, in terms of advancements in protections of the Great Lakes and so on. And we want to make sure that when we're no longer in these roles and when the folks at DFO are no longer in these roles, there are new people in those seats that we're future-proofed and to make sure that, in fact, the will of Parliament and the will of Congress needs to be adhered to.
Thank you. And I guess my next question has to do with the money. DFO seems to be suggesting by their actions that they have every right to decide how the Commission's dollars are spent because of, I guess, for lack of a better word, the perception of them being the portfolio manager. Is it accountable for the Commission? Would you agree that you would be the portfolio manager? And of course, the way the money is flowing or has flowed in the past, would you agree that's the way it should flow? Or moving forward, as per direction from the appropriations from Parliament, that it would simply be under your MOA a flow through DFO to the GLFC, 5 years with the $19 million, then, as I said earlier, back through the invoice that DFO would actually provide for the services provided to GLC, simply GLC would be expected to pay the invoice with respect to the $19 million they would receive through the appropriations.
So perhaps I can commence answering that question, and I'll turn to my CFO colleague. I would say that the question of flow of funds, so if we look to the convention and its Article 6, the Commission is to make best use of the contracting parties to the Commission as and their agencies as those to deliver the Sea Lamprey Control Program. Historically, since the 1950s onwards, and in fact even before the establishment of the Convention, those activities were undertaken by the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and that funding to do those activities was retained by the Department in order to do so. In the current day that there is opportunity for discussion and clarification around how that funding should flow, and my CFO colleague can speak in more detail to the way in which we're approaching that conversation in the immediate term.
Thank you, Mr.
Sorry,
Chair.
we're gone a little bit over time. If the answer doesn't come out in a subsequent question or an opportunity to present it, we would appreciate if you would submit any comments in writing to the committee, please. We'll now go to Madame Debienne for 6 minutes or less, please.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to all our witnesses. We always appreciate having you with us. What I'm mostly interested in is the relation between the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence, because I represent Quebec. Now, there have been problems of invasive species. We have that in the St. Lawrence as well. And we are always asking ourselves, who has the ability to concretely act when it comes to reestablishing the ecosystem equilibrium in our waters? So we're all thinking together today. We're all thinking today about who has the spending and funding authority, or spending authority rather. And I'd like to know if DFO is able to ensure that there be an update to assess, in order to be able to assess what is happening now with the sea lamprey. We know this is a problem in the Great Lakes, but obviously they're in the St. Lawrence as well. And we also have other invasive species in the St. Lawrence. that are eating very small fish, or we're losing all kinds of small fish in the St. Lawrence. And we're only ending up with this invasive species in our nets. So do you have the necessary tools in order to do the work of preserving a balanced ecosystem in our waters, in our common waters, whether it be the Great Lakes or the St. Lawrence? Well, I'll attempt to answer your question from a few points of view. In terms of tools, we do have agreements, and the Commission is an example of one of those agreements. Now, in terms of the St. Lawrence, there's also a Canada-US agreement for the St. Lawrence, and that provides us with a collaborative framework. And under that framework, there are scientific activities, there's environmental protection, and so those sort of set the path as to what we need to do and how we need to manage the issue of invasive species, for example, and the management of various activities in those waters. Now, can we do more? Yes, of course we can. There are other agreements where we collaborate with, for example, the Quebec government. And perhaps what we could do is provide you with some details of the specific activities in the St. Lawrence that deal with invasive species. There have recently been investments through our invasive species strategy, whose purpose is to tackle these challenges in the St. Lawrence and in Quebec more broadly. Let's say there's some tension within the Commission and tension between the United States and Canada for the reasons that were described earlier. But I'm going to give you an example of something. Let's say when a fishery, for example, a mackerel fishery is closed and the United States doesn't close theirs. What happens when we take steps to protect whale species and we take extensive measures and then we're blamed, say, by the United States for doing what we're doing? I'd like to know if we're actually paying the price of these kinds of tensions. No, I don't think we are. I don't think there's this tension that reaches out to other fora. We have good collaboration with the United States. And there are other issues, obviously, that we need to tackle together. And our minister has met their counterparts in the United States, for example, when we're looking at challenges regarding mackerel and other species. Because, yes, there are whale species that we are involved in protecting. And as you know, we are doing a lot to protect a specific species of whale. And I think that this responds to, as well, concerns and legislation in the United States when it comes to marine life. I would say that we have a longstanding, deep, positive relationship with our counterparts in the United States, and we deal with these issues often individually. Thank you. Now, I was talking to you about tools earlier. Tools to improve our scientific expertise. There are various issues that we have had to face, including in Quebec, and we haven't always had the adequate tools that we've needed. Would you say that the same is true of the Great Lakes? Do you lack scientific resources? Are you lacking tools or funding or enough of a budget in order to be able to stay up to date in your assessments and activities? I would say currently, no. We've had some very good recent investment in the Great Lakes, including the $44.9 million investment or funding, rather, for this commission. As well, during the President's visit, there was an investment that was announced for the Great Lakes region. it was about $420 million worth of funding for collaborative activities with both governments. So we do have a good funding, and it's up to us to invest this funding collaboratively and in a focused manner so that we are able to tackle our priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Debian. We'll now go to Ms. Barron for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here. Happy to have an opportunity to have everybody together to talk about the next best steps. I have with me today, Mr. Chair, my colleague from Windsor West, MP Massey, and would like to share my time with MP Massey and have him start off with the questions today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleague. And I represent Windsor West on the border. Since '97, I was founding chair of the Detroit River Canadian Cleanup Committee and Conservation Authority vice chair. And for 21 years, I've been vice chair of the Canada Interparliamentary Association that lobbies actively Congress and the Senate. And I want to thank DFO. I mean, you've done an exceptional job here. You're actually the only ones that united Congress and the Senate against Canada. And I can tell you that this issue is serious. And when we were in the halls of the Cannon Building, the Rayburn Building, Longworth Building, we hear from American colleagues. In fact, on the 6th of June, another letter to the Prime Minister went, you don't contest what Member Dingell said, who I've known for a long period of time. Do you not, what do you have to say to me when I have this issue raised to me repeatedly in those meetings when we're dealing with foreign affairs, the environment, transborder issues related to policy of 40% of the riding, my riding has trade. We have to deal with softwood lumber, everything else, and this issue continually comes up. And do you think it does not poison our other relationships?
I would say we have, as you note, countless relationships with the U.S. across a broad variety of files, of which DFO manages a significant number across a wide variety of issues outside of this particular issue. We recognize that there is an irritant here and that there has been challenges associated with this particular commission. And that's why we are working actively at the senior-most levels in the department with the commission to seek to address those issues and put us on a better path. So my question is, what do you think happens in those meetings when this comes up and it comes up as an irritant? What do you think when you don't contest what Member Dingell said? And why did it take so long for it to get to this? In fact, Mr. Chair, I would say this would never happen at Industry Committee where deputy ministers would not show up for such an issue. I mean, that says something in itself. And I think and that's not your fault. I understand that. But this relationship that we have ongoing here from a treaty that's not being respected, this is a treaty. So that's a big difference. Would you not agree that a treaty is different than other types of working relationships that we have with the United States? Sir, I would say Mr. Chair, I would say the treaty is being respected, and we are meeting our obligations under the treaty. We recognize that there are challenges in the implementation of that treaty and getting to a common understanding with our colleagues in the Secretariat to help put that on a better path.
Well, I guess this will be my last question in terms of the process here. How is it possible in the organization of a culture, do you think that there is a cultural issue that it's actually brought, again, I have 21 years in Parliament here, and we have the Liberal members got just another letter to the Prime Minister of 25 signatures, again, bipartisan, about this issue, and we're in front of the world here now. What disconnect, I mean, in our area, we wonder what the DFO, we actually think the DFO is one of the most elusive species in the Great Lakes. What, in your opinion, has to change culturally for your organization to actually bring this around, because our species are at risk because of this basically ineptitude?
I would say that our department is focused very squarely on work in the Great Lakes. Our collaboration in the Great Lakes Fisheries Commission has lasted for 60 years, and the active and effective work of that commission has reduced sea lamprey in the Great Lakes by 90% through that period, which has allowed the restoration of many populations of fish that did not previously exist in the Great Lakes area.
Yeah. And despite this, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. My colleague's going to be some extra time. Now, if this is solved now, why do you think you're seeing members like Member Dingell still wanting a change? Isn't that enough to tell you that the relationship is broken enough that Congress wants this actually structurally changed? How much more would you have to hear? And then how do you going to perceive the next number of years going forward when you actually have a partner that does not want to be in this relationship at this level anymore? What am I supposed to say to them? What are my speaking points when I go back to Congressman Dingell's room in Congress and they say that they still want this to change? And I'm supposed to say what?
Mm-hmm. Mr. Chair, as I've noted, we recognize the challenges in the relationship, and that's why we're working very actively at the senior-most levels to come to a better place and make sure we have a mutual understanding of our respective obligations within the context of the implementation of the treaty which we are supporting.
And the DFO does some really amazing work. I don't want to be, again, you're not, the deputy ministers aren't here, but do you not think at some point the interest of the DFO and your objectives that the broken relationship that you've helped create predominantly needs to be fixed by another party at this point, and stepping back actually might be good for the environment and good for DFO at this point in time? Has that discussion taken place?
We are very actively engaged in solving the challenges that are within our current mandate to solve, and are actively committed to seeing that happen in the very short coming period.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know my time is running out. I want to thank my colleague for giving up her valuable time here in the committee. I find it odd that we would keep insisting on a broken model that the other partner wants to fix in a different way than us, and we still don't have a solution. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Massey. We'll now go on to Mr. Perkins for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, witnesses. Mr. McClinchy, in the last 5 years, has the Commission received the full allotment that Parliament has allocated to the Great Lakes Water Commission in any year?
In the last 2 years, Mr. Chair, DFO has transferred, I believe in for the current fiscal year, it's $11 million. It was approximately the same amount off the top of my head in the last year, which means there was about $8.5 million withheld that covers the amount allocated to sea lamprey control. So there has been that withhold.
At least in the last 2 years, well, that's for 5 years. Same pretty much every year
Yes.
prior to that?
Prior to that, we were given, so the amount for sea lamprey control is always withheld, as the other witnesses have noted, and that's not something that we're entirely comfortable with, but want to have some discussions. And then prior to the last 2 fiscal years, the amount was less than what the treaty formula, or what the formula set as required by the treaty would have suggested we should receive.
Thank you. Mr. O'Day, the U.S. section of the Great Lakes Fishery Commission, and our Canadian section understands this, has been extremely vocal and upset about the fact that Canada has for years contravened the will of the Commission. Between 2001 and Budget 2022, for instance, your department failed to advance Commission's budget requests. In 2021, the commissioners the Canadian commissioners actually told the other commissioners that Canada is living up to its treaty obligation, all while the U.S. was quietly paying for Canada's bills, mainly in the area of sea lamprey. It's sort of like the bank teller skimming a little bit off every time there's a deposit made. So can you tell me why DFO is skimming that money?
Sir, I will turn to my CFO colleague to speak in more detail. DFO is skimming no money from the GLFC. All funding invested in DFO for the purposes of supporting the activities of the GLFC is invested in supporting the activities of the GLFC.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, I have limited time, so I will follow up on that, and I will say Parliament allocates this money for the Great Lakes, the GLC. Doesn't allocate it to DFO, it allocates it to the GLC. Can you tell me what statutory authority DFO has to usurp Parliament's votes on the budget to send this money to the Great Lakes Water Commission?
Sir, the appropriation from Parliament is allocated to the budget of Fisheries and Oceans Canada.
For the purpose of going to the Great Lakes Water Commission, not to DFO. You're just a transfer agent. Fishery Committee, sorry. Mm-hmm. You're just a transfer agent. You're not under Parliament's voting authority. It's not budgeted to you to take a piece of it. It's budgeted to go to the Commission. That's what we vote on every year. Mm-hmm. So what's the statutory authority that gives you the right to take money away from what Parliament has actually allocated to the Commission?
So, Mr. Chair, just to kind of reiterate the relationship and going back to the convention kind of as a foundational piece, First of all, the requirements are, as a member set by the Great Lakes Fishery Commission in terms of their requirements, but the budget is actually then approved by the contracting parties. So it will come to Canada, it will come to the U.S. to approve the budget. And in terms of the Canadian parliamentary system, as you know, the funding then is appropriated to the Department of Fisheries and Oceans to manage the Great Lakes fishery relationship from a Canadian funding perspective.
It says in the budget for the commission, it doesn't say for DFO, you're just a funding vehicle. Mr. Baker, what from your perspective is the result, first of all, the feeling of the U.S. and the result of what the U.S. has had to do in paying Canada's bills?
Oh, it's been very frustrating. I appreciate the question. We've the irony is we're pretty much in lockstep with the Canadian commissioners. We're floored by the fact that the U.S. and Canadian commissioners agree on what needs to happen and agree on the funding, and yet it's actually DFO that makes those changes. But the reality is we had a discussion a year or two ago, frankly, about all of the monies that haven't been paid by Canada over the years and whether or not we should be trying to go back to Canada for those monies as well. We made the decision for goodwill to just stick to that current fiscal year. So it's been extremely frustrating to us. And, obviously our relationship with Canada is very, very important. And it seems almost ridiculous to some that we're here having these discussions and the United States and Canada can't get along at an international level on this. It just
Mr. Baker,
make sense.
can you table with the committee how much money that is that you think you've covered over the years that if you did go back and ask for it, what it would be?
Sure. I'd have to specifically ask Mr. Lamb or Mr. McClinchy if they have those figures in front of them.
Or they can just table it with the committee.
Sure thing.
Yeah.
Sure thing.
It's if we were to go back to the last time that Canada funded according to the formula, it would be the year 2000. So the accumulative deficit from that period to 2022 when it was funded is about $70 million.
Wow. Thank you. I think my time's up.
Pretty close, sir. Yes, we'll go on to Mr. Kellaway for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's great to see the witnesses here. And I also want to say it's great to have Vance Badaway here. And one of the first conversations I had as parliamentary secretary was on the Great Lakes, and he provided me a great deal of information and background and knowledge. And of course, I've had conversations with members opposite as well on this very topic. My questions will be to DFO. What other fishery commissions and other binational organizations does DFO manage?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. The department has mandate to lead in and participation in Canada's participation and engagement in a number of international and bilateral fisheries bodies, including 7 regional fisheries management organizations, NAFO, NASCO, ICAT, and IATTC, 2 of which we're hosting the international meetings for this year, and several bilateral fisheries commissions directly with the United States, including the Pacific Alligator Tuna Treaty, Pacific Hake, Pacific Salmon Commission, and the Georges Bank Transboundary Fish Stocks.
Okay. Thanks for that. So in discussions so far today and discussions that I've had in a variety of places here in Ottawa, there's a reference that DFO unilaterally withhold funds from the GLFC. So my understanding is that the funding that is being referred to is going directly to the DFO's sea lamprey control program to deliver sea lamprey programs on behalf of the GLFC. So it's also clear that this process has led to friction, to say the least. I think it would be safe to say. So with that in mind, my understanding is that DFO and GLFA are discussing ways to codify predictable and stable mechanisms for the flow of funds. I want to talk a little bit, or ask you to talk a little bit about, we've had a history of challenges. I want you to speak to the last couple of months in terms of the developments that have taken place, because there is the what was, what may be, and then there are those in this room that have the right to say what should be. But I want you to talk a little bit about what is right now in terms of the efforts that are being made to strengthen the relationship, create predictability, fluidity, and adaptability in terms of this relationship we have with the Commission that is so important, not just to the Great Lakes, not just to Ontario, but to both countries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. So we have spent considerable time, I would offer, at certainly at the senior official level with the GLFC team to codify, as you point out, codify the relationship, to future-proof, to steal one of my colleagues' comments, the relationship such that the tenets of the convention are respected, and the irritants, frankly, that have arose over the last number of years have been addressed in terms of our relationship with the GLFC, how we provide funding, when we provide funding, so that the great work of the Commission can carry on in a way that and they have the stable and predictable funding to allow planning and so on, so they can continue to do that work with their American counterparts. We have codified the sea lamprey control component in terms of an MOA. We're in the process of codifying the remainder of the relationship. So again, to provide that future-proofing such that when we have, even to address areas of conflict in the future, such that we have a means to address them without having to bring together a group like this to have and discuss it, such that we can deal with it at our level. By and large, they've been very successful, the conversations, and we expect that the second part of the codification of the relationship will be finalized within the next couple of weeks.
Fantastic. I'm wondering if the folks from the Great Lakes Commission would like to make a comment on my question, or elaborate, or differ in any way.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And certainly I would agree with Mr. Goodyear that a lot of effort has gone into the codification over the past couple of months, and we have made good progress. But our concern, future-proofing is an interesting word to use, because we have gotten to this point because of a deep-seated culture that exists within the department that we think is largely due to, I think the common word is misunderstanding. Right? There's a misunderstanding of the department's role in terms of it being portfolio manager. There's a really deep misunderstanding of the Commission's full mandate. The Commission is not just about managing binational sea lamprey program. There are many other aspects to the Commission's mandate as identified within the Convention. And there's a really deep misunderstanding of the context, I think, within which DFO delivers the sea lamprey control program, right? It's done on behalf of the Commission rather than as an extension of the department's domestic program under the authority of the Fisheries Act. And we heard a little bit about that, actually, in one of the responses. So we're encouraged by the recent discussions, but the culture is very deep-seated, and so while we're encouraged by the current leadership's engagement, it takes a long time to change culture, and so.
Okay, I got to cut you off there, Mr. Lamb. We're going a little bit over time on Mr. Callaway's time. We'll now go to Madame Devienne for 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Chair. Perhaps I'm going somewhat off topic, at least today's topic. However, I think the reason why we're all here with you today is because there's a problem with alignment between, we're losing our moorings a little bit when it comes to the DFO and organizations and tools all being aligned. There are various studies that have been done, that we have done. And I think sometimes there is misunderstanding. And we've seen that in other testimony here. Sometimes people feel that not everything has been taken into account. That the DFO isn't decentralizing enough on the ground. The mandate letter of the minister was, however, very, very clear in that respect. In the mandate letter, there was a clear directive to listen on the ground, to encourage local preservation and purchases, to give more access by Canadians or Quebecers to their own resources. Now, you might say that I'm going off on a tangent, but I don't think I am. It's my impression that we have a department here that somehow only works with other offices. I meet people on the ground who are concerned, who are worried, because situations evolve much faster on the ground than the DFO is able to react. And so what happens is that we all miss what's happening. For example, the lamprey might be taking over and we're all arguing. So we have to find a way to find solutions together, and we have to do that quickly. There is urgency here, because when we're talking about an invasion of species, it goes much faster than one might think. So what would you propose in the short term? Now, you said that you've figured some things out and that you've helped reduce these sources of tension. But in the short run, what can you do? And what can you do quickly, for example, to control this lamprey invasion?
Weigh in on that, because I think...
If I could ask you to supply an answer in writing, the 2.5 minutes has expired. And unfortunately, we have to move on to Ms. Barron for 2.5 minutes or less.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so my first question is to clarify. Mr. Baker, you had said in your opening statements that the change in governance from DFO to Global Affairs would mirror the successful and proven U.S. structure. Can you expand a little bit on that, please?
Sure, I'm happy to do so, and I'll, of course, defer to Mr. Lamb or Mr. McClinchy if I need some help. But the reality, our funds are filtered through the United States Department of State, who has no interest in actually doing any of the programming themselves. And it's really that simple for us, because DFO in Canada actually does the work with the lamprey themselves. There's an interest in the money that flows to their office. Department of State is completely neutral, much like GAC, and that's where we see the comparisons and why it's such a successful and proven model.
Thank you, and perhaps I can loop back if needed. But I do want to ask the same question to Mr. O'Day, his thoughts on the success of the program that we're seeing in the U.S. and how what we currently have set up differs and why we aren't moving in that direction.
So, as I've mentioned previously, the machinery of government decisions rest beyond the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. I would say that since 1954, the existing structure of relationships has allowed for, despite recent tensions, has allowed for very strong collaboration on a binational basis. DFO has the program mandate, as does its counterpart agency, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in the U.S. In this context, though, as contracting party, so in our role in representing Canada in its work with the Commission, we do that same activity in, as I mentioned, a number of other binational commissions to great effect. We have direct relationships with the U.S. State Department in managing that, and it has worked effectively elsewhere. We recognize that there's a tension in the relationship here, which is why we're working through that process of clarification. It is quite particular to this particular commission, despite being quite similar in structure to many other commissions in which we work.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I forgot to put my timer on. How much time do I have? Probably all gone
8
now.
seconds right now.
Okay.
Sorry
you.
about that. We'll go on now to Mr. Arnold for 5 minutes or less, please.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's not very often this committee is dealing with an international issue, and it's concerning to me that Canada is being viewed on the international stage as not upholding our end of the deal. As members of this committee and successive fisheries ministers in Canada know, I've been a strong advocate for the federal government to really take serious action on aquatic invasive species. It's also important to note that invasive species have an impact on every system in the Great Lakes and cost more than $200 million annually in lost revenue and prevention strategies. Mr. Baker, if our American partners are managing invasive species or invasive carp and we are not, what impacts does Canada's non-management of invasive carp render on the Great Lakes fisheries?
I'm going to defer to either Mr. Lamb or Mr. McClinchy for a response. If that's okay.
Yeah, well, I think it's DFO's question as to what's happening in terms of Asian carp management or invasive carp management in Canada. It's not our function, but I would say that there are missed opportunities in terms of what's happening now because of the distractions with this problem that we're talking about. Even if you look at it in the U.S., for example, we work directly with, even though it's outside of the convention area, we have worked collaboratively at the request of Congress to work on invasive carp in areas such as Lake Champlain and Lake Memphremagog, for example. And I think there are opportunities for us to collaborate more in Canada on not just invasive species, but on areas around habitat, which, as our colleagues at DFO said earlier, is a mandate area. But I think we're missing opportunities to collaborate because we're distracted by this.
Thank you. If I can go back to Mr. Baker. Mr. Baker, what will happen to the Great Lakes fisheries if the Commission folds because of the current breakdown in the situation?
Well, I think that would be catastrophic. Obviously, I can't speak to the day-to-day, but certainly the Commission's mandate for the past 70 years has been properly handled and done very well to bring down the sea lamprey threat. And so the risk of not having a program in place to do that, we know how quickly those invasive species can repopulate and take back over and decimate our fisheries once again. And we just can't let that happen. So our goal, obviously, is to come together to make sure that that doesn't. We just need to find the proper way to do it.
Okay, thank you. I believe it was Mr. O'Day that stated they are meeting the obligations of the treaty. Mr. McClinchy or Mr. Lacombe or Mr. Baker, would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, quick answer is no. Well, if you look at the treaty, there is an article in the treaty that says that the commissioners were to, it's Article 8 that says that the commissioners are to determine the form and appropriation of the budgets from the two parties. And in 1956, at the first meeting, the commissioners took that to heart and developed a formula to determine how the budget should be set. And that's never been contested. And so up until 2022, that formula was not being met. And until we had the political pressure that solved that problem, we were out of compliance. And so it's strictly linked back to the treaty.
Okay, thank you. Mr. O'Day, you stated that you're working at the highest level to resolve this issue. What level would that be? Would that be at the minister's level, at the prime minister's level, within the department, or what level are you working to resolve this issue?
So there is engagement up to the very highest levels in government in considering this issue in terms of direct dealings with our counterparts at the Secretariat. Around this table are at the Deputy Minister.
The very highest level, is that to the PMO's office?
So in terms of the department for whom I can speak, our officials are engaged at the deputy level with the Secretariat to resolve this issue, and our minister has addressed the issue directly at this committee, as you know.
And do you don't know that if it's been taken to the PM level yet?
My understanding is that there have been discussions with the Prime Minister's office by members represented around this table, but that's to the best of my understanding.
Okay, thank you. I believe.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Arnold. Right on time. We'll now go to Mr. Hardy for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start with one question and then cede the rest of the time to Mr. Badaway on this round. We're pushing 70 years, and I'm just curious as to why, after 70 years, we have to sit down and codify something. When did it go off the rails? Mr. Lamb, maybe you could...
Well, the problems have been around for decades, and there's a long history of how this, the role has not really been understood by the department, I would argue. But in 2018 it had reached the point where it really needed to be addressed. The U.S. was already indicating that it was no longer willing to top up, so to speak. And there were other issues that we really needed to deal with because of the how hamstrung the Commission had become by the lack of recognition of what its role was. So it's been a long-standing problem. It's just been amplified since 2018.
Appreciate that. It's worth noting that between 2000 and 2015, the Government of Canada did not increase any allocation, whereas I imagine the American government did so, and therein lies the gap that we relied on Washington to fill. I'll turn it over to Mr. Badaway now.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to say that this is a frustrating conversation. And as I said earlier, this is something that we inherited post-15 from many governments of the past, going back to 2000. And Mr. Lam's comment with respect to the retroactivity of this up and around the $70 million mark is also quite alarming. With that said, I guess my intent today is, as frustrating as it is, and it has been for the past few years, is to turn that page and to come to some resolve. And I'm hearing that's happening. I'm hearing that from the department. I'm hearing that from the GLC and others that are involved, including, as Mr. Massey said, in our discussions with members of Congress when we go over to Washington, which also could be, quite frankly, sometimes embarrassing when they bring this up with respect to the current condition of the relationship. So with that, the MOA has been mentioned a few times. So let's turn the page and let's come to that solution, which I'm assuming that this study is intended to do, is to come to that resolve. So moving toward that solution, we're talking about a memorandum of agreement. We're looking at the administration of the program, which I understand the GLC administers the program, and the contractor is the DFO with respect to components of that program. And of course, as I said earlier, invoicing to the GLC then takes the appropriation from Treasury and pays the bill. So with that and that expectation, because that expectation has been articulated through the budget, 19 million times 5 over the next 5 years, then therefore that relationship can continue in that realm, and I'm assuming that would be part of the MOA. The governance, I understand, is an issue as well. The transfer between DFO to GAC, or other options that may present themselves, such as the board makeup with a member from GAC versus DFO and a civilian member that would actually make up any other shortfall in governance. So I guess I'm going to ask the question to both the DFO as well as to the GLC, what ideas that you're going to have moving forward with establishing that MOA, and I'll start off with the GLC.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Mr. Badaway raises a really important question. And one of the most important tools and keys to the success of the Commission over the years has been the independence of the Commission, the ability for the Commission to, as Madame Desbiens had mentioned earlier, be nimble and respond on the ground. And that's really what this is. Despite, the title of this study is the allocation of resources to the Great Lakes Fishery Commission, but at the heart of it, it's not really about money. It's about the independence and the ability to reach across the borders. There are 8 Great Lakes states and the province of Ontario at play here, and countless partners. And what's happening is that the GLFC's ability to make those decisions independent of the portfolio manager has come under stress, and that's the critical bit. We put forward an MOA that would help to, Mr. Hardy had asked, why do we need to codify this? Well, it's because over time those independent abilities to set our programming have been eroded, and that needs to be reestablished in accordance with the treaty. I would note that this committee did a study. I believe it was the 8th report, the science report, and in that it made some specific suggestions, and I'll just cite, with respect to, on page 39 of the report, there was some commentary that talked about good policy being incorrectly implemented. There was testimony given that relate to recommendation 4 and recommendation number 19 in that study that talk about the structural problems within DFO that are hindering science. Of course, the GLFC is more than just about sea lamprey. We administer sea lamprey control. We're responsible for Great Lakes science. We're primarily responsible for reaching across the borders and working independently on a strategic plan with U.S. partners. So all of those things combined require the independence, not the least of which the reason for is because the federal government doesn't have jurisdiction over fish in the Great Lakes. You know, the parliamentary secretary mentioned earlier about the other fishery commissions that DFO is responsible for. The reason this is unique is because we're unique. We work with the states and we work with the province of Ontario because they are the governments of primary jurisdiction for fisheries management. And frankly, before the commission came along, there was a lot of work being done in all of the jurisdictions separately, and it failed. It was only once we began doing things seamlessly and reaching across borders in this border-blind way that we got successful. So it's incredibly important for us and for our programming that we continue to have that independence. It's enshrined in the convention, and that's why. You know, sea lamprey don't have pockets. They don't carry passports. So we need to be able to reach across those borders, which is of critical importance for us to actually execute a nimble program that's responsive and allows, you know, I always say we don't manage the fish, we manage the people who manage the fish, and that's why it's of critical importance that we have this clarity on independence and governance.
Thank you, Mr. McClinchy, and to Mr. Hardy and Mr. Badaway. We'll move on now to Mr. Small for 5 minutes or less, please.
Chair, I'm going to let Mr. Lawrence take my first 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much. And it's my first opportunity to be at this committee, so thank you for having me here. I'm still sort of shocked at sort of the hubris that the DFO officials, Mr. O'Day and Mr. Goodyear, have. Do you guys not realize how badly you've mismanaged this? Like, I was an hour ago, I was up yelling at the Liberals, and now I'm hearing them, and they're saying everything absolutely right. You've brought us together, so I appreciate that, but. Like, this has been just completely bungled. Like, the budget was clear. It said for you guys, you had to take the money and give it to GLFC, and you couldn't do that. I hope that you're approaching the negotiations on the MOA a lot better than that. I hope you're realizing that you're an equal partner and you are not their parent. Could you please just give me 30 seconds on explaining your absolutely disastrous management of this?
So I would simply say that we're working very actively, as we've noted, to work towards an improvement of our relationship with the GLFC, including working in a number of areas to address concerns that have been outstanding. That includes ensuring that there are clear processes for receipt and responsible spending of the Commission's funding, ensuring that there's good governance of the organization, including the appointment of strong commissioners.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm still troubled by the fact that you are not in charge here. There are legal agreements that are the formation of this that are governing the Commission. Your job is to take money from Parliament, which we've given you, and get it to these gentlemen, and stop bumbling this. You've destroyed you've hurt the relationship. They won't even sit down with us. Mr. Baker, I want to ask you a couple of questions. If in fact the agreements are put in place, the memorandums of agreements are put in place in accordance to what you've heard today, and will that be enough to get you? Will that be enough to reconvene the Commission and get this Commission working again?
Listen, my number one goal is obviously to get the Commission working together and making sure we're doing what we need to do to make sure our fisheries are kept intact. I share your concerns with a lot of the issues you've just stated. My primary objective personally, as one member of this Commission, I'm not 100% sure that the MOA is going to be the end-all be-all that makes the difference in this relationship. But if my members at the Commission themselves, Mr. Lamb, Mr. McClinchy, feel reasonably confident that we can move forward in a productive way to do that, I, of course, will support that as a U.S. Commissioner. And I want nothing more than to get back to the table with our Canadian counterparts and to work for the good of the Great Lakes and the fisheries as a whole. So I'm doing everything I can, but I really need to be assured that this relationship isn't irreparably broken, and that it will move forward in a way that is
I share
fair.
your sentiments 100%. I'm just short of time, so I'll give the rest of my time to my colleague, Mr. Small.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, my questions to Mr. Lamb. You referenced $70 million in accumulated debt, basically, on the Canadian side, if they were to catch up in payments. And at about 3% interest, we'd be looking at $140 million owed by Canada right now, over 22 years. What's the economic impact of that to Great Lakes fisheries in terms of lampreys that weren't destroyed?
Well, as Commissioner Baker said, we're looking to the future. So there's been a conscious decision not to pursue that deficit. In actual fact, we were able to use the U.S. contributions to keep the lights on, so to speak. So we're looking to the future. But, you know, and we're actually encouraged by the discussions that are going on. But there's been a lot of damage done here. And as I said before, it's a deep-seated culture that we're dealing with. And so we need to see results before we can be satisfied that what we're doing now is the solution to the future.
So, Mr. McClinchy, how are you finding it now working with DFO? How are the relations? Do you think that we can attain some of our goals in bringing this relationship back to where it needs to be? Do you feel it's possible, or is the relationship too damaged?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's fair to say that there has been a lot of damage, as Mr. Lamb has already alluded to. We do have, as Vice Chair Baker mentioned, in Mr. Goodyear, someone who has come to the table in an attempt to make things better. But I think it's important to bring to the attention of the committee that a lot of the progress that's been made has been made because of intense political pressure, because people are watching. And the concern that we have is, one, we haven't crossed the finish line yet. Right, we still haven't addressed the machinery issues that have been raised. We still haven't addressed the MOA in its finality. And most importantly of all, if at some point the political pressure goes away, then the progress has the potential, when Mr. Goodyear or myself or anybody else retires or moves on, has the potential to reverse itself. So we want to make sure that these things are addressed in a meaningful way. I think it's incredibly important to note that there are a number of models that are available, whether it's the IJC or the Roosevelt Campbell Commission. These are commissions that are very, very closely structured to the way we are, and they have successfully been nested in global affairs. They are successfully functioning, and we would like to see a similar level of success. This again, this is not about money. This is about the governance. This is about the independence. This is about the ability of the commission to execute its mandate in a meaningful and fulsome way.
Thank you, Mr. Small. We'll go on now to Mr. Morrissey for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair. Most interesting dilemma. My question is to Mr. O'Day. Are there advantages for the Great Lake Commission to be in DFO versus GAC?
Thank you for the question. Chair, the advantage, I suppose, of the Commission being attached to the Department of Fisheries and Oceans is that there are many people within the department who have an intense and localized understanding of the issues at play and the particular challenges of the management of the Great Lakes fishery and of invasive species, and who at all levels of the department understand the kinds of opportunities that exist to address those challenges in a more robust way. For instance, we have a national aquatic invasive species program, and our ability to bring our understanding of that work into our conversations with the Great Lakes Fisheries Commission and in support of our work in the control of sea lampreys helps to ensure that we're taking advantage of best practice.
Okay, thank you. So you feel it's best positioned within DFO, although there's different opinion. Am I correct? DFO does not have jurisdiction over the fish in the Great Lakes? Somebody made that comment. Is that correct, Mr. O'Day?
So DFO has the federal government has jurisdiction over all fisheries, both inland and marine. However, in many instances, those responsibilities under the Fisheries Act are delegated to the provinces. In the instance of Ontario, they're delegated to the province, and there is a particular role for the Commission in the management, the binational management of the Great Lakes.
So fishery. DFO does not directly administer fishery policy or in the Great Lakes?
That's correct.
It's handed it to the provinces.
It's been the province does that. Yeah.
Thanks. So my question then would be: Is there involvement from there's only one province, I think, here, primarily Ontario, and the states, a number of states. Is there anything at that level that's complicating the management of the agreement? At the state level and the provincial level?
To my understanding, the Commission, and may be able to speak to this as well, I think the Commission provides actually quite an effective nexus for collaboration between governments on either side of
okay,
the
that's
border.
fine. It was curiosity. I want to go to Mr. Lamb. You referenced 2000 was the last year fully funded. So since 2000 up till when, the Commission has not been fully funded, correct? Did I interpret you correctly?
That's correct, until 2002. 2022.
So from 2000 to 2022, all governments in there underfunded.
Canada, as a party to the agreement, was underfunding for that period, yes.
Okay. And was the same irritants in place over that period as is coming to a head over the last number of years?
Yeah, as we were saying, Mr. Chair, we've been trying to resolve this problem for a long time. This is not new.
And nothing happened, but what I'm understanding from some of your conversations in the last short period of time, there has been some meaningful discussion on getting towards a more acceptable understanding and how to move forward. Did I interpret you correctly?
That's correct. We've done a lot of political outreach since 2018. From 2018 to about 2019, early 2020, I would characterize it as having about 5 false starts with the department to try and resolve this sort of internally. And we never really
you had starts.
Pardon?
But at least you had starts. Are you telling me?
Well, they had no value because we lost time essentially. So. Okay. We did a lot of political outreach going forward from about 2019, and that's when really things started to change. So,
okay, Chair, how's my time?
35 seconds.
Just a last one. You stated, and I believe it's Mr. Lamb, a deep misunderstanding within DFO. Now, you're not the first one to say that, and in respect to DFO, I hear it on the East Coast from some of my fishers. Certainly hear it on the West Coast. In my last time, elaborate a bit more. What's the misunderstanding?
Well, I can really only restate what I said, in that the Commission is more than just about sea lamprey control. The Convention is very clear on what the role of the Fishery Commission is, and coordination of a binational sea lamprey control program is definitely one of the 3 pillars of the mandate. But there's been part of the problem with the funding, the way that it flows in DFO, is that DFO holds the funding for sea lamprey control because it delivers sea lamprey control on the Commission's behalf. But
could you do it better than DFO?
No, the Convention actually says that we are to use agencies of government or individuals on the street corner to deliver our programs if we can. One of the articles is pretty clear. So we're
Thank you. We're going to have to move on. We're going over time. I'll now go to Madam Debian for 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very pleased to hear Mr. McClinchy talk about independence. I mean, it means something very clear to us, and that's exactly what Quebec wants, I would say. We want people to be able to get up in the morning, get their work done. And in Quebec, it's sort of similar. People get up, part of their money goes to the federal government, and they get the rest. Anyway. Mr. Lamb, you said that it's been for about 20 years that this gap has existed. Now, we've been talking about this for more like 50 or 60, but there is a funding gap. There's this gap between the funding you get and the funding you should get. And it has been going on for about 20 years. And there's also the issue of the freedom to decide how you function and act. And Mr. McClinchy, you said it hasn't always been about the money itself. It's about your ability to act. But if you want to be able to act, you need the means to act, don't you?
That's true, and certainly it's one of the reasons why the folks who drafted the convention very specifically provided for some immunities and some independence in the way that the commission could operate. It's important to note, and you talked earlier, sorry, Mr. Chair, Madame Desbiens spoke earlier about the need to be nimble and to move quickly and to have the tools. Certainly before the commission was in place, a lot of these sources, the province of Ontario and the 8 states, were doing things independently within silos, trying to control sea lamprey, trying to foster cross-border collaboration, trying to advance freshwater science, and to be very blunt, it failed miserably. And it wasn't until we were able to look across borders and to work collectively, and the commission was in place to serve as a facilitator, to help bring those parties together, to come up with constructive and useful solutions that look after the Great Lakes, help to look after the Great Lakes fishery on an ecosystem-wide basis. And that's why we're asserting, and it's expressed in some of the documentation provided, it's expressed in the legal opinion, that the loss of that ability to be nimble and to be seen as that independent broker of solutions is striking to the heart of the Commission's ability to do the job that we've been asked to do.
Thank you, Madam Desbiens. We'll go on to Ms. Barron now for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to perhaps Mr. Lamb or Mr. McClinchy. We were talking earlier about the sea lamprey control. If this change were to happen, moving from DFO to global affairs, what would that look like, the continued work around that?
Mr. Chair, that's a great question, and it gives us an opportunity to clarify that. When we talk about a change in machinery of government, we've never talked about using anybody other than DFO as the sea lamprey control agent. And to finish off the question I was trying to answer earlier, we're quite pleased with the work that our partners in DFO has done on sea lamprey control. That's not the issue. The issue with the department is not with sea lamprey control. And we'd be happy if we were able to continue with the department as delivering sea lamprey control. We just have to address this conflict of interest that we have where they're delivering the funding on behalf of Canada and also delivering sea lamprey control at the same time.
Okay. Thank you. I saw firsthand how invasive those sea lamprey are when they were brought to my office and suctioned onto my hand. So I want to make sure that doesn't get lost in this. The final question that I'm going to ask is around, is there an alternative to changing the governance structure from DFO to global affairs? Is there another option that could be looked at?
So we're basically dealing with 2 issues. We're dealing with obviously the lack of codification as to how this should function, how whoever it is that's the portfolio manager, there needs to be a codification of that because that's part of the problem. It's failed miserably, and there have been too many assumptions by the portfolio manager about its role. So that's number one, and then number 2 is we do have. We have a legal opinion on the conflict of interest. That legal opinion stands on its own. So I won't try and explain that. But we also have manifestation that the conflict exists. And what we've heard about in terms of the funding in November of 2021, I think is manifestation of that. We have many more examples going back over the years about how the conflict exists. We actually had a DFO commissioner come to the commission meeting back in the late 1990s and announced to the commission that Canada was defunding the commission without any consultation with the rest of the Canadian commissioners or with the U.S. Right? So this problem stems back decades. So we're really trying to deal with 2 problems here: lack of codification and a conflict of interest.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. We'll now go to Mr. Epp for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Global Affairs is our voice internationally, and it's been mentioned earlier that they're the administrative caretakers, the machinery of government functioners, if that's a word, for the International Joint Commission and for the Roosevelt-Kampolo Commission, both which are similarly structured to the GLFC. I'm still dumbfounded why the DFO continues to take the position that the GLFC should remain with the DFO. Why is GAC, and I'm going to direct this to Mr. Goodyear, why is GAC the right place for GLFC, for the other commissions, and DFO is the right place for the GLFC.
Go ahead.
So perhaps I can address the question, sir. Mr. Chair, the DFO is pragmatic about where the Commission's contracting party relationship is situated. We are making our best efforts while in the role of the contracting party to ensure that we have an effective and clear relationship with the Commission and are able to work through any issues that arise in that context.
So you are ambivalent as to the machinery of government change to global affairs?
That decision rests outside our purview, so we provide analysis on the benefits of having that commission, that role rest with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, but recognize that decision rests elsewhere.
Right, and so would you table in writing that you're ambivalent to this committee for this report?
We're not, ambivalent is not the correct term. I would say that we are open to retaining that role, we are working
is a better term,
effectively.
perhaps?
We're pragmatic about where that role rests.
My concerns arrive around transparency in the present function. IJC nests within global affairs. If I look at the main estimates from this past year, there is one line item where the funds are transferred from the Treasury Board for $9,271,693. Basically, they're appropriated dollars. That is the entire, that's transparent. I can follow that. I order a paper question, the transfer of funds for the GLFC function that was ran through DFO. I have 11 pages of spreadsheets. I can't follow it. Would you consider this transparent for the people of Canada?
Mr. Chair, that's one of the issues that the member brings up that has been part of the conversation that we've been having with GLFC, ensuring that we have the presence of the GLFC in our public accounts of Canada. So we're happy to note that going forward, they will have a line item in the public accounts of Canada, and you will see the full appropriation in the public accounts of Canada.
Just to be clear, you're saying the entire appropriation from the Treasury Board to the GLFC will appear in one line item as per the 2-year commitment you articulated earlier?
The entire appropriation will be present in the public accounts of Canada.
For 2 years?
For the period in question, yes, 2 years.
Is 2 years. The budget commitment from the 2022 budget was for 5 years. Why are you only committing to 2?
So we are still working through that in terms of it. They will be the amount will be in public accounts. The total amount will be in public accounts. But going forward, in terms of what that looks like, and if there's additional sea lamprey control and so on, then of course that's subject to change. But for the commitment that was made to GLFC, the amount will be in the public accounts.
Mr. Lamb articulated or said just a few minutes ago, and I think you referenced in November 2021. I think you meant in November 2022. Quite frankly, your statement to the Commission of withholding $15 million, you have basically stated that was a mistake. You've rescinded that. Both of those decisions, were they done in consultation with the Commission?
Mr. Chair, all the work that I've done since arriving as CFO inside the department has been done in consultation with my GLFC colleagues.
So your November 29th directive to the Commission on the funding, withholding $15 million of the allocated $44.9, that was done with the prior knowledge the day before the budgets were to be set? That was done with the full knowledge of the Commission? Is that what you're stating, or am I misunderstanding?
So the member's question was if I had consulted,
right.
and so on that note, no, I had not. It was simply a clarification of the Treasury Board submission. Going forward from that point on, everything was done in collaboration, coordination with the GLFC.
So we are to understand that the codification process will.
Thank you, Mr. Rapp. We'll move on now to Mr. Badaway for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple points, and I think we have a huge opportunity here, especially with the creation of the Canada Water Agency. There's no doubt that all is relevant when it comes to, in this case, the Great Lakes and other efforts, whether it be economic, environmental, or social. But I guess the point I want to make is this, is that the appropriation made in that budget, that particular budget, was for $45 million for 5 years. And I guess the expectation is, not I guess, I would expect that the expectation is that appropriation times 5, not 2, would actually be flowed through to the GLC, period. So I'm not sure where the 2 to 5 years comes in. You know, you're working through it, I get that. But ultimately, the expectation is that the full appropriation of the $45 million be flowed through from Treasury right to the GLFC. The third point is, and it goes to Mr. O'Day's point about your involvement, the DFO's involvement, and this is where I kind of get a bit, I guess, concerned, confused. is yes, I understand why DFO wants to satisfy themselves with involvement on this file, on with respect to the Great Lakes. The point is, you're the contractor. So I guess what begs the question is, why is there such an interest to have the money flow through the DFO versus just flow through GAC? That's the confusion. So I understand your interest when it comes to fisheries, because although you don't have it as part of your mandate, it's provincial. For the most part, it's delegated to the GLFC when it comes to that invasive species, or any invasive species, including sea lamprey. And where my question is that, and I'll repeat myself, and I apologize for that, is yes, you have an interest in being a part of that, and you are as the contractor. So what and why do you have an interest in having the flow through from Treasury through DFO to GLFC, who then contracts back to you the practical, as you put it, part, and then you invoice the GLFC for that contracting service? They pay you. From the $45 million that's appropriated to the GLFC over the course of time, they pay you for that service. Where's the interest there? Versus it going to GAC, to the GLFC, they still contract you, they still pay you, but the money goes through GAC versus DFO. I don't understand the interest there.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may just clarify in terms of the way the funding flows. So the funding for the delivery of sea lamprey control does not go to the GLFC and then back to and then build back to.
No, that's my point. If I may, that's my point. Is that's the whole crux of the problem here, is you are arbitrarily taking that money before. What contractor do you know sets their own rates and takes money before who even gets the money? So, and that's the point of this.
So,
is what interest, what right do you have, and again, crux of the problem, versus going to GAC and back to the GLC and then to you. It's going to DFO, which, again, as Mr. Lamb mentioned, is the conflict of interest.
So, Mr. Chair, I still feel there's a requirement for clarification. The amount of funding that is held by DFO to provide sea lamprey control is subject to negotiation with the GLFC. It's not simply arbitrary. There is no arbitrary component to the way that funding is decided.
Hold on. This is the mistake here, and I'm sorry, I only have so much time. But this is the mistake. The appropriation from the budget is very clear. Very clear. It's to go to the GLC for the sea lamprey program. Period. It doesn't say to go to DFO and you're going to negotiate and yada yada. As I said earlier, there's no negotiation. There's no right for negotiation. This is a treaty organization that since 1950 has its own rights. And as Mr. McGlinchey rightly noted, those rights are to have that autonomy to provide these programs delegated to you. What if, in fact, they didn't delegate that contracting to you? What if, in fact, they delegated it to somebody else? Would you still have the right to hold that money back? No. So, and that's the crux of this problem. And what I'm trying to do here is put that aside and let's just come to a resolve. So in the final seconds that I have, I'll take it to establish a takeaway. And that takeaway is simple. It's to hopefully come to this resolve through the MOA to start the ball rolling, to then reestablish that positive relationship. And then, of course, with all our expectation, is to possibly see the transfer from DFO to GAC. But at least let's get an MOA that we can agree with to, as Mr. Baker said, get people back to the table.
Thank you, Mr. Badaway. We'll go to Mr. Arnold for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll first start with Mr. O'Day, if I could. Mr. O'Day, I believe you acknowledged earlier that this issue has been taken to the highest level, and you also said that, to your knowledge, it's been taken up to the Prime Minister's office level. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Could you provide at what date that was taken to the PMO's office?
That-
Approximately?
Sorry, that wouldn't have been done by our department, so I don't have that information myself.
Could you provide that to us eventually in writing?
We can take that back, indeed.
Okay, thank you. So if it's taken it all the way up to the PMO's office, where is the roadblock on this? Earlier you mentioned that the decision rests outside of your department's purview. I believe that's what you implied, beyond the department's purview. Is that correct, what you said?
That's correct.
So it would be now to the PMO's office. Is that correct?
Those decisions are taken outside of
cabinet?
at a whole of government level.
Okay. So earlier in testimony this year, Ms. Telford, the Prime Minister's advisor, said that everything the Prime Minister receives he spends a lot of time with, and he most definitely reads. So can you confirm where the documents are and that if he even received it?
I would that would be a question that you would need to pose to the Privy Council office itself.
So it appears the roadblock is at the PMO's office or cabinet, if it's not with your department. Is that correct?
I wouldn't be able to speak to that. You'd have to speak to others.
But it's gone past your department up to the cabinet level, or is it at the minister's level?
It's not so just to be clear, Chair, it's not a matter of it going past our department. It's not a decision that we take. So we provide information and others take produce advice to make those decisions.
So everything here indicates that it would be the roadblock is at the PMO's office. I'll move on. Mr. O'Day, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans now is currently serving as a fiduciary for the Great Lakes Fisheries Commission and as a hired contract agent for the delivery of the sea lamprey control. How can you not see this as a conflict of interest? And I'll ask the same question of Mr. McClinchy or Mr. Lamb once you've finished.
So recognize that the advice that the Commission has received is different. The advice we've received is that there's no conflict of interest between the duties of the Commission and those of the Government of Canada or the Department, as those duties and interests are one and the same, which is the control, the mandate of the Sea Lamprey Control Program and the broader activities of the Commission, which are done to serve the binational interests of Canada and the U.S.
Mr. McClinchy or Mr. Lamb, would you agree?
Well, we have a legal decision, a legal opinion on the conflict of interest. That's now in the package for you to read. But I do want to clarify that DFO doesn't receive the money from Parliament just for sea lamprey control. It receives the money for the entire suite of programs that the Commission delivers. And so, we're a lot more than about sea lamprey control. We're about fisheries management coordination. We're about research and coordination of research. And so the money that the department receives is more than just for sea lamprey control. And so the conflict is around the delivery of sea lamprey control, but it's a bigger picture than that.
Thank you. Mr. O'Day, has the department done an analysis of the potential flow of the funds instead of going through DFO, whether it be GAC or another department? Just yes or no.
We've been asked to look at the possibility of what the potential pros and cons, and we've provided that advice.
Have you done that analysis, and could you provide it to the committee?
We've provided advice in terms of what that might look like if it was delivered via another government department.
Could you provide the committee with that advice that you provided?
We can provide that information, yes.
I think I'll pass my time if there's any left to Mr. Epp.
Well, actually, you got two seconds, Mel.
I'll take it, Mr. Chair.
You can't talk that fast, let me tell you. We'll move on now to Mr. Kellaway for 5 minutes or less, please.
Okay. It'll be a little bit more than 2 seconds, but I will share my time with MP Hardy as well. I think it's important to note that Budget 2022 states that Budget 22 proposes to provide $44.9 million over 4 years, starting in 2022, 2023, and $9 million ongoing to Fisheries and Oceans Canada support the Great Lakes Commission. Likewise, Supplementary C provides funding to DFO as funding to support the work of Great Lakes Fisheries, and that's in Budget 2022. Now, I've heard today that money is being withheld, and I think that was referenced maybe once, maybe twice. And I'm wondering to DFO, could you clarify how this money is being used?
So, Mr. Chair, the funding is appropriated to the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and then with that funding, DFO funds the Sea Lamprey Control Program, and the remainder of the funding that's been appropriated to DFO will flow through the GLFC as Mr. Lamb has indicated, for the remainder of their programs. In terms of the Sea Lamprey Control Program costs, we validate at the end of each fiscal year how much was actually spent, because of course at the beginning of the year you have an estimate of what it's going to cost to deliver that program, and then we provide whatever funding is remaining at the end of the year from the Sea Lamprey Control Program to the GLFC. So the only funding that remains inside the department related to activities of the GLFC are those that are specifically required for delivery of the Sea Lamprey Control Program.
Okay. Another very quick question. In terms of priorities and work plans in relation to the sea lamprey, I just want to clarify, is that a dual effort? Who sets the priorities? And maybe this is for GLFC. Who sets the priorities? Is it a collaboration? Is it more one side than the other? Who sets those priorities in terms of timelines, work plans, things of that nature?
That's certainly been clarified this year. So as Mr. Goodyear pointed out, we now have a memorandum of understanding that's much more, much clearer than ever we've had in the past. And so we do have much more accountability, I think, in how the sea lamprey control funding will be spent going forward.
Thank you. And I think that, and then I will hand it off to Mr. Hardy, I think that we clearly articulated challenges that are decades long, but I've also heard today that there are efforts being made. I've heard that there's a cultural issue at play here, but I also know that there are multiple cultures when there's a partnership and collaboration, and culture drives the strategy. So it's my hope that DFO and Great Lakes Commission can continue to work on the right path that sees some initial progress, and hopefully we can make more progress together. Over to Mr. Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Kellaway. The GLFC obviously has working arrangements with states. Now, are the states acting as contractors, or do they treat the programs as state initiatives, such as the DFO has kind of been tagged with doing as far as the sea lamprey is concerned?
No, we don't have any contracts with the states. The state's responsibilities are the same as the province of Ontario in that they have fishery management jurisdictional responsibilities, so they perform that function through the Lake Committee process, which we established in 1965.
So you don't provide any funding to the states? They don't provide any funding to you?
Correct.
All right. Let me play dad for a second, because it seems to be that, we have the DFO acting as though the sea lamprey program is a domestic program. It's a program by the Government of Canada. And the GLFC believes that, no, it's a program that should be done on behalf of the GLFC, right? So do we agree on DFO side that this actually should be a program done on behalf of the GLFC? Or are you still under the impression that this is a Government of Canada program that lands in your lap and it's up to you to do it?
Mr. Chair, in line with Article 6 of the Convention, this is very much a program that DFO delivers on behalf of the GLFC. The Article 6 of the Convention notes that GLFC is to make best use of the contracting of the agents of the contracting parties, which is in our case DFO, in the case of the U.S.
Okay, so it doesn't then add up that you run the Sea Lamprey program, and then whatever is left over goes to the GLFC. That just seems to be counter the description here. But are we in fact on a track where the money will flow through you to the GLFC, and then you will be allocated money through the GLFC for the Sea Lamprey program? Is that the way it's going to work?
So that's a decision to be taken. As an agent of the Government of Canada, per Article 6, DFO's contributions over the past 60-plus years have been done through appropriation direct to the department, as we've been discussing today. There's obviously a decision to be taken about the flow of those funds for the future, and that's part of the discussions that are ongoing.
Who's accountable for the Canadian
Okay,
money?
sorry, Mr. Hardy. You've gone a little bit over time, and I want to have a chance to close out the meeting and say a huge thank you to the witnesses today for appearing, Mr. O'Day, Mr. Goodyear, Mr. Baker, Mr. Lamb, Mr. McClinty, and of course, Congresswoman Ms. Dingell, who shared knowledge as well with her opening remarks. I will remind members, of course, that on Monday, the first hour of study will be towards fish study on Great Lakes Fisheries Commission with witnesses. And the second hour will be drafting instructions for report on foreign ownership and corporate concentration, and instructions for the drafting of a letter following DFO briefing on report 21, West Coast Fisheries. And just to give an indication of how much interest there was in this particular study, we had 5 members actually sub in today. And I want to thank them as well, Mr. Epp, Mr. Badaway, Mr. Massey, Mr. Rogers, and Mr. Lawrence. So there's obviously quite a lot of interest in this, and a lot of people have a lot in stake. And of course, Mr. Davies. I forgot to write him down, but anyway, everybody is included. Have a good evening, everybody. Big thank you to our clerk, analysts, and our translation team for another great job for a successful meeting.
Mr. Chair, excuse me, Mr. Chair. I'd like to wish you a happy birthday. We, all of us here, it slipped out. It got leaked out there, Mr. Chair. So I'd request Madame Debienne to lead us in singing happy birthday.
Cher Président, le jour de votre anniversaire, je veux vous enlacer de ma voix, vous dire pour vrai ce que tout le monde pense en secret. On répète, le bonheur a besoin de toi, le bonheur a besoin de toi. Bonne fête, Monsieur le Président.
Point of order, there was no translation.
No, we'll figure it out. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.